einen schönen guten Abend, liebe Gäste.
I wish you a wonderful evening, and I am seeing that you are slowly but surely taking your seats, and I would like to wish you a warm welcome to this beautiful location. I think this is truly heartwarming, the colors, the sun is shining, and in times like these, this is something that we all deserve. So I wish you a very good evening, because this is a special evening. The courage of an individual is being honored, but this is moving the entire world. It is the 19th M100 Media Award. It's such a special award that so many people have already received. And this is supposed to strengthen those that are fought against when it is something they are fighting for, namely democracy, women's rights, and freedom. And therefore, a warm welcome to you all, and thank you for your support. Shima, Babaei, a warm welcome to you. You are such a courageous woman, and at the age of 14 already, at such a young age, you had to experience how the Mullah regime was treating people. She was arrested a couple of times, lives in Belgium in exile, and does not know where her father is. This is a dramatic fate, and we will hear more from her, and also from her activities. I'm also very delighted that Ursula von der Leyen is here with us. Good evening to you, President of the European Commission, and Mike Schubert, who is the Lord Mayor of the city of Potsdam. A warm welcome to you as well. And a brief hello to everybody who's joining us on the live stream. There are cameras in this hall. It is good that so many people can see us. And Mr. Schubert, I think the floor is yours.
I'll be happy to address you, ladies and gentlemen, and dear Ms. Shima Babaei, President of the European Commission, Ms. von der Leyen, Ms. Düzen Tekkal, Ms. Jasmin Tabatabai, ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the M100 Advisory Board. It was a year ago, on the 15th of September 2022, when in this House we honored the Ukrainian people for its struggle against the Russian aggressor. And what we did is we expressed our solidarity with the Ukrainians who are fighting for democracy and freedom, with a struggle born of desperation and perseverance, and we have shown our solidarity with them for freedom and human rights. Vitaly Klitschko gave an impressive speech for the right of self-determination and freedom, and that was on the 15th of September 2022. And merely one day later, on the 16th of December, a young woman died, named Gina Mahsa Amini. She died in Iranian custody. She was arrested and murdered by the people wearing the uniform of their own government, because, like the people in Ukraine, she stood up to those who wanted to deprive her of her freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, and this year we are presenting the M100 Media Award for the 19th time, and for the second time in a row, it goes to an individual who receives the award on behalf of a greater cause, for a struggle against a seemingly overwhelming opponent and for freedom. But there's a clear distinction here if you compare that to the laureate of the past year, because this time round it's this aggression and oppression that's not coming from a foreign country, but from their own homeland, from Iran, from their own government, from their own fellow human beings, from a despicable regime and its guidance patrol. For years, Iranian women have been protesting against the regime in their own country. And that was truly a protest that has gained sad attention last year, because the Iranian government responded most forcefully, with brute force. And people are still protesting in the streets fearlessly, bravely, for a greater cause. And we hope at the end of the day everyone will realize that men and women are not only but also before the law equal. Ladies and gentlemen, today with the M100 Media Award, we're honoring the women life freedom movement in Iran that is standing up for women's rights, something that is actually taken for granted in the civilized world, despite all the violent threats and draconian punishment. Dear Shima Babaei, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here in Potsdam, in the state capital of Brandenburg, on the occasion of the presentation of the M100 Media Award. I'm happy that we also have representatives of the state government, Ursula, the Minister of Science, who once again is attending the ceremony tonight. I also would like to welcome my colleague, the Mayor Walid Hafezi, who spent his childhood in Tehran and now lives in Potsdam. But my welcoming words are not related to his life or his biography. No, he's celebrating his birthday tonight, and still he decided to be with us here tonight. Welcome, Professor Walid Hafezi. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of weeks ago, in the city center of Potsdam, a young woman approached me, and actually she would stand in my way. She apologized for that and said, well, she really needs to talk to me, she said. Now, 3 days later, she was in front of me once again, right in a city festival in the city center, and once again, very adamantly asked me to talk to me. Now, for those of you who are engaged in local politics, you will understand someone who keeps talking to you and demand that conversation is a positive thing. People who are vehemently friendly, and I've talked to her and found that very impressive. And there was a reason why that young woman would want to talk to me. For about a year, she's been living in Germany. She is an Iranian. She's an architect. And last year, she started a graduate course here in Germany, but she's never seen her husband and her daughter ever since. She's only allowed to reunite with her family once she's found a job here. Now, despite any internationally recognized diplomas and her expert qualification, in a time where the building industry is facing hard times, it's very hard to achieve. But at the same time, we need those skilled people for our economy. Sometimes we can't seem to make it happen. So she told me her story, and she also told me what she's afraid of. She's afraid of being traced back to where she lives now. This courage that she's shown as a mother and as a wife, she fears might lead to repressions in her home country. She had to leave her home country of Iran. So she's truly afraid of the reprisals by that government. So I agreed that I'm not going to disclose her name tonight. But still, I'm wondering, what would a regime do to persecute people that are forced to keep their identity in secrecy in order to protect themselves and their families? Ladies and gentlemen, if I may, I'd like to share a personal view of hope, because this is also related to where I come from. Just look at the recent German history. You're going to see that the urge for freedom is stronger than anything that's in its way. In Potsdam as well, and please let us not forget, across history, there were people in uniform that were locking up young people, tortured them, murdered them, because they didn't want to be submissive to ideologies that others were forcing upon them. And it happened more than once in the history of Potsdam. People wearing the uniform who were persecuting innocent people, murdered them, locked them up. And ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to lecture you on German history here tonight, but there's one thing I'd like to say. I am hopeful, and that hope comes for a reason. We've undergone dark chapters in our history, and still are testament to those in the many memorial spaces, also here in Potsdam. But Shima Babaei, something that I would like to share with you. You will be in a position to overcome that dark chapter of your history as long as there are people out there that are actively committed to freedom and equality. Like many other women from Iran, you're bold, you're courageous, you are full of resolve, and have that strong will. I hope that your dream will become a reality and that you'll be in a position to lead your life without fear, just like it's true for your family, your father and your significant others. So You can do whatever you like, work what you like, wear what you like, say in public what you would like to say without being punished by anybody else. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your words a little later. But I would also like to thank the President of the European Commission. I would like to thank you, Ms. von der Leyen. Now, despite your extremely busy calendar after the State of the European Union yesterday in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, this morning you were in Copenhagen, and tomorrow you will travel to the UN, to New York. But despite all that, you came here to be present and to speak at the award ceremony for the Women, Life, Freedom movement. And this is very laudable. And it shows all of us how, for you as a politician, as a representative of the European community of values, you see the importance of this event. And it also shows the value and the recognition that the M100 Colloquium and the M100 Media Award now enjoy beyond Potsdam. This morning, 80 journalists from different countries discussed on the topical issue of Between Ambition and Disarray, the future of democracy. Now, unfortunately, that again is a very topical issue given the developments in some countries of Europe. And certainly also, this is the most hotly debated topic in Germany, I'm sure, in the next couple of months. So, ladies and gentlemen, the desire for more democracy in Iran is older than the protests that have been in focus since the autumn of 2022 and the women's movement. And it also shows you that the media community needs to get engaged to defend freedom and equality. Let us use that as a clarion call today. Let's stand up for human rights, equality and freedom across the world. Thank you very much.
توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درختای فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگهای بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه های بیوقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه، برای چهره ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزا، برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای این همه، برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خونه های پوشالی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی، برای قرصای اعصاب و بیخوابی برای مرد میهن آبادی برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود برای زن زندگی آزادی برای آزادی برای آزادی برای آزادی
Sie wissen, ich bin Journalist.
You know that I'm a journalist, and every day we're covering what is happening in this world. But this is touching our hearts. Now, when I see you, it's so great to have you here. Thank you so much. Can we have another round of applause for you, please? And it's those courageous women who need a voice. Well, actually, they have a voice, but spreading that voice in the world is what we need to do. And an evening like ours today is important. It shows all of us that we need that support. We're also going to see Düzen, Tekkal and Jasmin Tabatabai on stage a little later. But before we do that, I would like to welcome someone who is always who always listens, and her voice is also something we need. Someone who can achieve things on a political level. So please put your hands together for the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Sehr geehrter
Lord Mayor and distinguished guests, it happened exactly 1 year ago. On the 16th of September 2022, in an Iranian hospital, there was a young woman who died. Her friends knew her by the name of Masha. For her family at home, she was Gina. And this was the name that her mother cried out when she cried over her grave. Gina is a beautiful Kurdish name, and it means life. Masa Gina Amini had just turned 22 when she was killed by the Iranian morality police. 2 days before, she had been arrested because she had shown too much of her hair. And already in the police car, she was beaten up, and then at the police station, she fell into a coma, and she never woke up again. But millions of her fellow Iranians raised their voices for her, and they are still standing up. They are risking imprisonment, exile, or even death. They stand up for women, life, and freedom. And this is why we are here, united in Potsdam tonight, in order to honor the life of Gina, and in order to honor the countless Iranian women and men who risk their lives on a daily basis for justice, equality, and democracy. We honor all heroines and heroes of life, women, freedom for the M100 Award, because their fight for fundamental freedoms is something that we support wholeheartedly. What makes this protest and this moment so meaningful? If we are honest, we don't really know exactly where this movement is going to take us. Its history is continue to be written, and this while we are still speaking here. But we can already say with certainty today that something historic is happening in Iran. For the first time, women are the igniting spark in Iran, but also the driving force of a revolution. And I bow to the courage of the Iranian women that even are leading those protest marches, even in front of the men. So the courage of the young girls that are burning their headscarf openly in the street. This is deeply impressive. And they are risking their young lives because they are hoping for freedom and a better future. And this is not only a turning point for hundreds and thousands of women and girls in the country, it is a tremendous upheaval in Iran because women are taking the lead. They are fighting for their personal freedom, and at the same time, they are fighting for an open, for a free Iran. When the Islamic Republic of Iran was founded in 1979, I was 22 years old, exactly the age of Gina when she was killed. I grew up in Europe, in a society that maybe was not perfect, but I was able to develop. I could ask for the same rights as a woman without having to fear state repression and violence. I grew up in an open democracy, and my fundamental freedoms were protected by the rule of law. In the Iranian theocracy, millions of women live in constant fear and oppression. Only few are allowed to work, and they are told what they have to wear and how they have to behave, and that they should, at best, stay at home. Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, called the hijab the flag of the revolution. And now it's the women in Iran who, in the past year, left an indelible mark because they are leading their own revolution, the revolution of women. They are fighting for taking off the veil of repression and oppression, and they are fighting for the right to also have a voice and a face in their home country of Iran. This brings me to my second point. This moment is also that significant because these women are fighting for the fundamental freedoms of all Iranians. From the start, it was about more to them than just showing their hair or being able to engage in the sport of their choice, being able to work independently and love without having to ask for permission. They are asking for freedom from fear and repression and violence, and this for all citizens in Iran. And this is the reason why millions of men and women, young and old, are supporting these protests. And this is terrifying the regime to its core. The Iranian theocracy responded to this call for an opening with brutal violence. Since September of last year, the regime has detained more than 20,000 peaceful protesters. More than 500 were killed by the security forces, and more than 100 accused face the risk of execution. Their dream of a better future is the crime they are accused of. But despite all state violence, Iranians are putting up resistance. In July, the trial against one of the most important political prisoners of the country had to be postponed because the accused activist Zipidi Golian had refused to wear a headscarf in court. And in the city of Rasht, courageous bystanders were intervening when the police was trying to detain 3 girls because they were defying the compulsory veiling. And this shows that the movement, Women, Life, Freedom, has already started to change Iran. And there is no way back. So what can we do over here in Europe? We have the duty to honor the memory of Gina, also the memory of all innocent women and men that were killed by the regime. And I am thanking you here so much, all of you tonight, that for precisely this reason you have come. But we also need to follow our words by action. We need to hold those accountable that are violating the most fundamental human rights. The European Union and its member states have imposed sanctions against 204 persons and 34 institutions that are responsible for the violent crackdown on the peaceful protests. We have frozen their assets. We have banned them from entering the European Union, and we have prohibited all exports of technologies that could be used in order to surveil and oppress the people in Iran. And we have done much more. So we will not ease that pressure until the Iranian regime stops its violence against these peaceful protests and stops arbitrary detentions and overturns death sentences and releases all those that have been unjustly imprisoned. Human rights are to be respected universally, and this is what can be found in the founding document of the United Nations. And where severe crimes are perpetrated and committed, we have to have the means to act. So the Iranian regime is not only mistreating its own people, it's also helping Russia to terrorize people in Ukraine. The Iranian leadership has decided to support the Russian war of aggression. It is supplying Putin with kamikaze drones that are used for attacks not only on military targets but also on innocent people. And the way Iran is behaving in Putin's war is something that must and will determine the future relations of the EU with Iran. The courage and the struggle of the Iranian women is something that is having an impact far beyond the borders of the country. It is moving and inspiring women around the world. The challenges they are confronted with might be different, but the rights they are striving for are the same. First and foremost, the most fundamental right of all, the right to be safe from violence as a woman. Violence against women exists everywhere, also in Europe. And it is never justified to beat a person. It is never justified to beat a woman. It is never justified to mutilate the body of a girl. And no always means no. I am proud that the European Union this year finally joined the Istanbul Convention. And for me, it is the most important task for this year to adopt the first European law to combat violence against women and domestic violence, and to help finalize this. Because equal opportunities do not just happen like that. Progress has to be fought for hard and is lost easily. And this is also holding true for countries where there is no morality police. Genuine equality requires a daily awareness and commitment. Women and girls need to have the freedom to pursue both a family and a career, just like boys and men are doing this. And they should also receive the same pay, just as their male colleagues, because there is no single argument that justifies different pay for the same work. And women and girls, of course, need to have the same opportunities to reach the highest levels because they have the same talent and experience they can contribute. I believe that a society in which women are free and equal is not only a more equitable society, it is also a more successful one, with more talent, with more skills and more potential. And I am certain the violent oppression of women in Iran is going to turn out to be the Achilles heel, the weak spot of the Iranian theocracy. The regime in Iran will collapse because of women. Just like all societies are doomed to fail that marginalize half of their population. Ladies and gentlemen, in the week after her murder, Mahsa Jina Amini actually intended to start at university. Jina wanted to become a doctor. That was her dream, to save people's life. Instead, the regime took her life. But they cannot kill Gina's dream. The dream of women and girls throughout the world, the dream to be free and to fully use their potential. There is hope for the future of Iran because these courageous people are setting an example every day. People that pave the way for others. And I am so delighted today that we have these examples, these role models here amongst us. For all heroines and heroes of women, life, freedom, they will accept the M100 Award. Please welcome with me one more time, Shima Babaei. Shima. Shima, since 2017, you have been fighting for justice, democracy, and women's rights in Iran. Twice, the regime detained you, and you were even put into solitary confinement. You were forced to leave your home. But nobody managed to silence you. You are a role model for women and girls throughout the world. And if your father, Ibrahim Babaei, could see you now, you would also be a role model for him. The regime in Iran will one day have to explain what happened to your father. We will find out the truth, and we will also hold the culprits accountable. Women, life, freedom. This is a turning point for the women in Iran, for democracy and freedom in your country, and for women everywhere. You showed the world that there is a different Iran. And we want to believe in this different Iran that you stand for. We thank you for your courage. It is our responsibility to be loud and clear ourselves in order to make the voices of the strong women in Iran heard even more. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and the floor is yours.
سلام به همه.
I would like to welcome you. Women, life and freedom is the movement that you all support, and I'm grateful for that. I would like to thank Ms. von der Leyen and the Lord Mayor of Potsdam for your kind words. Words that have given us the strength we need, that support us, support the struggling women in Iran. And we need this support and this spirit in order for us to make our voices heard. 1 year has passed since the murder of Mahsa Jina Amini. 1 year ago, on these very days, Mahsa, a 22-year-old woman, was brutally murdered by the Islamic Republic's Guidance Patrol simply because she was a woman and because of her choice of clothes. This tragic event marked the beginning of the Women's Revolution for Life and Freedom. And it was a movement that ignited the collective spirit of Iranians and brought people to the streets from all corners of Iran and indeed from all over the world. Those events have galvanized the world with this magnificent revolution. It's a revolution that truly emerged in the heart of a religiously dominated Middle East that was based on fundamental slogans that demanded freedom, and an attitude clearly that was opposed by the dictatorial government of the Islamic Republic. I would like to thank you for having considered me worthy of receiving this award, but above all, please, I must say that we should never forget those who take their cameras to document the acts of bravery and atrocities in the streets. And therefore, I see now this award as a recognition of my people, of my fellow citizens who have taken to the streets with their mobile phones, despite the most severe repression, censorship, the filtering of content. But their mobile phones are their only weapons, and they use those to capture both the people's protest and the government's brutal repression. People like Ghazaleh Cheheltan and Shireen Alizadeh, who capture demonstrations on camera, they captured those on film, and their last image was captured by their camera, and that was the impact of the bullets hitting their own heads. I dedicate this award to Niloufar Hamidi and Elahi Mohammadi, two journalists who were arrested for covering the murder of Mahsa Amini and who, to this very day, remain in prison. I also dedicate this award to Nazila Mozofian, a young journalist who was recently sentenced to imprisonment for interviewing Mahsa Amini's father, and also for having broken the requirement to wear the hijab. She has been arrested, raped, and is currently has been in solitary confinement. Today I'm here to tell you that our revolution, the women's revolution for life and freedom, has not stopped. No, many women are sending us the message by removing the compulsory hijab. They're engaging in civil disobedience. They use their own hair as a symbol, a message to the fact that we will not return to darkness. There is no way back to those dark times. It is true that this revolution will continue. It will continue until the day of victory and the fall of the anti-women, anti-life and anti-freedom dictatorship of the Islamic Republic. According to statistics, at least 500 people, including also 60 children, have been killed since the movement began. At least 20,000 people have been arrested, have been handed down harsh sentences. Dozens of people have been sentenced to death, and to date 7 of them have been executed. Majid Rezavand, Mohsen Shakari, Mohammad Hosseini, Mohammad Mehdi Karami, Majid Kazemi, Saleh Mihashemi, and Said Yagoubi. All these people were severely tortured to obtain false confessions and then were sentenced to death in unfair trials. Musicians such as Tamai Salehi, Saman Yassin, and Merdi Yahari, who sang songs in support of the people, they were arrested and are still in prison today. Actresses who removed their hijab in support of the women's movement for life and freedom were also arrested. They were sentenced to prison with additional restrictions, such as, for instance, a ban on using any mobile telephones or visiting psychologists. They're not allowed to engage in any their professional artistic activities anymore. Doctors who treated the injured demonstrators were arrested, were sacked. The repressive forces used pellet guns and paintball guns to blind and injure the demonstrators. They also used ambulance cars to transport their forces inside the demonstration. They used fire engines to disperse the demonstrators. Schools and universities were important centers of this revolution. And this is also why the students and teachers who were out in the protests were either arrested or expelled. Authorities even used poison gas in girls' schools to poison children. The families of the demonstrators who were killed are being held against their will simply because they are the fathers, the mothers, sisters, or brothers of the victims. Many of these family members are currently in prison still. They're not even allowed to hold memorial ceremonies at the graves for their loved ones. Several of them have been brutally arrested for attempting to visit the graves of their family members. The Islamic Republic may think it can put an end to the dissent and the demonstrations just by arresting people, by oppressing them. But as someone who has been detained 5 times for defending human rights and also for opposing the compulsory wearing of the hijab, I have to say that each time I become even more determined to fight harder and more vigorously. Now, together with my husband Dariush, who's also here tonight, we've been taking part in the demonstrations in Tehran in December 2017. And the security forces at the time assaulted my husband right in front of me. They also physically attacked me, pepper sprayed me in the face. And a few days later, after my husband's release, we were just planning to celebrate our wedding. The security forces attacked our house right at that moment. This time, they arrested us both. On the evening I was supposed to wear a wedding dress, well, I found myself in an isolation cell, dressed as a prisoner, while my husband was in a similar situation in another wing of that prison nearby. Ultimately, we were both sentenced to 6 years in prison. But we continued our activism despite being denied the right to education, to employment, and we have been repeatedly subject to travel bans. There was ongoing pressure, reopening of cases against us with the charges such as espionage, which ultimately carried the possibility also of a death sentence. So this left us no choice but to leave the country that we love so much. We managed to escape from Iran in the dark of night through mountainous terrain and on foot, and then were constantly being shot at by Iranian border guards. At that moment, I promised myself that I would wholeheartedly fight for freedom, for democracy in my country, and then ultimately to be able to return to a free Iran, Iran free of the mullahs. And although the Islamic Republic has detained my father for 366 days now, and has subjected me and my family to mental torment without us knowing what has become for him for days and months. But I'm still here today to tell you and to tell the Islamic Republic that my struggle is not over. You're now facing a woman who defies you and who will not let your torture and your crimes stop her. But also, today, I am a member of the Iranian diaspora, so I feel a very heavy burden on my shoulders. I know that I must be the mouthpiece of my compatriots, a voice for people who are subjected to immense pressure. But for more than a year now, I've become more than determined. I must say that we are the ones that say no to the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic's crimes are so numerous, it would take you days, months, or even years to describe them in detail. But there's one thing I would like to ask you. I ask you and all the freedom-loving people of the world who are listening today, please, instead of expressing superficial compassion and issuing condemnations from your governments and from your parliaments, I would like to ask you, to urge you to withdraw all forms of financial and moral support and also commercial and political cooperation from the regime in Tehran. Put the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps on the list of terrorist organizations, and do understand that the future Iranian government, after overthrowing the mullahs, will be the best friend of Germany and other democratic and free countries. Throughout history, we have seen that dictators have always been doomed to demise. People have always emerged victorious, stand on the right side of history alongside the victorious people of Iran. And I would now like to dedicate the remaining time to a woman who is one of my heroes, a courageous woman who took to the streets for freedom and who was shot in the eye. She is one of at least 500 people who have lost their eyesight as a result of that systematic and deliberate firing of bullets right into their eyes by the repressive forces. And she, for me, has become one of the living witnesses. Her name is Mersedeh Shahinkar. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to Shima, Babaei, and thank you to all those of you who invited me to be here at this ceremony. My name is Mersedeh. I'm 39 years old. I trained in banking management, but I also have a passion for sport. So I also worked as a fitness coach and started working in this field as well. I'm also the mother of an 11-year-old daughter, Rasa. I'm one of the women who lost their eye during the movement for women's rights. And as long as I can remember, I've always protested against the anti-women laws that govern our country. And this is also the reason why, with the start of the women's movement, Women, Life, Freedom, I felt it was my civic duty to stand alongside people in the streets to protest against the government, for life and for freedom, to protest against being denied the smallest and even most natural of human rights, such as the right to choose my clothes, which had been taken away from me in a country whose constitution is based on hostility towards women, assigns no value at all to the woman that I am. So I stood up in protest. So I fought for this right, first for myself and then for my daughter. Because just like other citizens of the world, I wanted to protest when my rights were being violated. But Iran is not like other countries. And according to the Islamic Republic, we are not considered to be citizens of that country. We do not have any right to demonstrate or to protest. So, in these circumstances, the removal of the headscarf has become for us a symbol of national defiance, disobedience, which has allowed us to show to the world that the Iranian people no longer want the authoritarian regime of the Islamic Republic. We do not recognize them as legitimate. Well, the Islamic Republic retorted to my protest with bullets. I was on the streets almost every night to take part in those demonstrations at the time, and one night, as always, I was out in the streets together with my mother, my friends, and my daughter, without even wearing a weapon in my hands at all. And I was shot at. Without any hesitation, one of those criminals shot me in the right eye. I was rushed to a hospital, my face full of blood. I took a photo of myself, and then I shared it, showing the victory sign with my hand, and still smiling. And then I published those images. I continued to take part in the demonstration, even with just one eye. Now, this incident, of course, irritated the Islamic Republic even more, and this time they raided my home to arrest me. They came to our house, turned everything upside down, destroyed furniture, but they couldn't manage to arrest me because at that time I was undergoing eye treatment in a number of medical centers, and eventually I was able to leave the country thanks to the United for Iran group and the Munich Circle, and I was recently able to travel to Germany. So I'm here with you today, just to tell the story, to tell you all that as a woman who took part in the women's movement for life and for freedom. I lost the sight in my right eye to bullets fired by the forces of the Islamic Republic. But let me say this, I have no regrets about my protest and my actions. And if I went back, I would protest again and shout in the streets for the life and freedom of women. I would again fight against the ruling dictatorship. I would strive to make our voices heard by the whole world. And I believe that even with only one eye, I can still celebrate freedom. And I urge all those of you who hear my voice to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Iranian people on this difficult journey. And please, don't limit yourselves to symbolic expressions of solidarity and condemnation. The Islamic Republic is not only the enemy of the Iranian people, it represents a dangerous threat to humanity as a whole. Stand up to these criminals and know that if you remain silent today, the atrocities of the Islamic Republic will harm you tomorrow too.
Vielen Dank, dass Sie
Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. And this was something that was truly heartwarming, and such horrific stories that you have to tell, and it is all the more important that we report about this, that you are here as a politician, and this is why it is so hard to say congratulations, but you really deserve this award. So let us take a deep breath, and together we will also have the time afterwards to discuss what we experienced tonight. But before that, let me welcome two women who from the start were supportive from Germany. They are fighting with the Iranian women. Düzen, Tekkal, Jasmin, Tabatabai, please come up here. So this is your stage now, and you can share it. Düzen and I see ourselves as the mouthpiece. This is something that we have done for 1 year, and actually we don't really have to do this today that much because we heard such excellent speeches, Lord Mayor, Ms. von der Leyen, just fantastic speeches. And we also actually heard the genuine voices of the women in Iran. And this is a luxury that we don't experience every day, to have everybody united up here on stage. This is so valuable and so important. For weeks, the regime has been increasing its pressure on the population. They are actually arresting almost everyone who said something throughout the past year, who participated in the protests. They are intimidating people. They receive telephone calls. The brutality in the prisons really increased a lot. The regime is also trying to intimidate Iranians abroad. I saw a 7-minute video clip today where they claimed that 3 people from London and from Berlin and from America were arrested by them and that they were held accountable and will be held accountable in Iran. It is all the more important, and I'm so grateful, truly grateful, that tonight you are still focusing on Iran and that you are really also giving attention to this, because the regime is used to killing in hiding and committing its crimes without public attention. So it is so important that you are helping us to end this, to put an end to this. What Shima just said at the press conference, this is the message to that regime. The times when we were silent are over, and you cannot simply carry on like that. Jinjia Nazadi, and I think it's also very happy to say, it is important to say that the movement is alive. And this is something that was just impressively demonstrated by the 2 ladies, Shima and Mersedeh. They even lost their eyesight and still they were willing to die for this freedom. These are our role models. And I think this is also something that was expressed so well. The people in Iran who take to the streets always fight for an open society, and not only for themselves. They fight for women's rights, for the universal human rights, and the men who accompanied the women and who were even executed for Jinjia Nazadi were also executed for the open society. Mr. Klitschko last year, the award winner of last year, and his enemies are also the enemies of civil society in Iran. The drone attacks are putting Europe at risk, are putting the world at risk. So if this world is to become a better place in our own interest, we need to support the freedom movement in Iran. You don't have to be Iranian to show solidarity with what is happening in Iran. Jina Mahsa Amini was a Kurd, but it was for the first time that the entire country stood up to Kurdistan and Tehran. They all said, we are all Jina Mahsa Amini. And the slogan of the resistance movement, Jinjia Azadi, for me as a Yazidi, as a Kurd, as a woman, as a war reporter, is something that I experienced first time when the Kurdish women were saving the world from the IS groups of murderers. And they are the contrary of and the opposition of our freedom movement. This is why they fear this movement so much. There is the Jinjia Azadi effect. And this is precisely about these platforms that are nothing we should take for granted. And this is something which is so important for people in Iran and everybody who has suffered oppression, that somebody like the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is taking the floor to support these people. It is the symbolic power of resistance, and we want to make this heard everywhere as well as we can. So here is the partnership program that I should draw your attention to. This is about those who are politically detained or detained for political reasons. And here we have Nahid Tagavi and Jamjid Sharmat, who are fighting for their children. The only crime they committed is that they have this nationality and they are used by the Islamic regime. And on behalf of the children, we would like to ask you to do everything in your power so that these parents can put their arms around their children again. In Austria, I was speaking to a political hostage and I was asking him what rescued, what saved you. I wanted to see my grandchildren again. The people in those prisons have a vision of a free Iran. So please support our work and continue to support us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Düzen. Thank you, Jasmin. So thank you so much for your attention and for joining us tonight. And I would like to invite you together with everybody else to discuss tonight and also maybe let everything sink in. So thank you very much and all the best to you. Congratulations one more time. Thank you. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the evening. And I think there is also a photo opportunity. So if I could ask you up here on stage for a photo.